ever UK Africa Investment Summit opens in London. UK repositions to play active role in Africa's future.
Supreme Court affirms election of 4 state governors, and victorious governors welcome judgment as upholding the people's mandate.
Federal government presents national policy on methanol fuel production.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on persistent pipeline explosions in Lagos.
For many years, Ijegun community in Lagos has been in the news for the wrong reasons. First, it was for a pipeline explosion that occurred on the 15th of May 2008 after a bulldozer struck an oil pipeline in the area Kingsley.
That's right, Jumai. Now the fire started from what is already referred to as the Isolo end of Ijegun, spreading to houses and schools. About 100 people were reported to have lost their lives in that incident, while more than 15 houses and 20 vehicles were destroyed.
And later in December 2010, another pipeline explosion occurred in Idu, a few kilometers from Ijegun, killing 10 people.
Now recall also that in 2014, 10 persons lost their lives during yet another pipeline explosion in the Ijegun-Imore area.
There were reports that an NNPC pipeline ruptured, spewing refined products into the creeks, killing thousands of fish, poisoning boreholes, and forcing almost 1,000 households to resort to patronizing water vendors.
Now, the most recent of these explosions occurred just on Sunday around the Ekoro area of Abulegba in Lagos. Now, the reports indicate that no fewer than 3 persons, others are indicating, of course, 5, were killed in that particular incident, and it was said to have been the result of the activities of vandals who allegedly ruptured an NNPC pipeline in a bid to steal fuel. Now,
who is responsible for the many explosions in this area of Lagos State that has led to the loss of so many lives and property?
What is being done to address the situation in these communities that make them so susceptible to pipeline explosions?
These are some of the issues our panel of discussants will be profiling solutions to as we look at the persistent pipeline explosions in Lagos State. I am Jumwa Yusuf. Thanks for joining us on the program.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Jumai to also welcome you to the program, and in course of which we have our complementary segments. These include newspaper review, business, sports, and others. In the meantime, let's join Usman Aliyu for the early morning news. Good morning, Usman.
Good morning, Kingsley and Jumai. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. With Africa widely acknowledged as the global future, given its vast potentials for economic prosperity, the United Kingdom says it is better positioned to play a huge and active role in that future. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson gave this assurance at the opening of the first ever UK-Africa Investment Summit in London. President Muhammadu Buhari led Nigeria's delegation to the summit, also attended by dozens of African and British leaders.
Africa is the future, and the UK has a huge and active role to play in that future. We want to be with you side by side every step of the way. So let's seize the opportunities that are before us here today. Let's build the partnership for the future. And together, let us write the next chapter for my country, for your country, and above all, for all the peoples.
Similarly, Nigeria and the United Kingdom have resolved to increase the level of economic cooperation between their countries following the exit of Britain from the European Union. This was the outcome of a high-level engagement between President Muhammadu Buhari and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on the margins of the UK-Africa Investment Summit in London. The President also received in audience the Ghanaian leader Nana Akufo-Addo on matters relating to border closure. The President also met the Prince of Wales in Scotland, where issues relating to environmental preservation and sustainability for job and economic prosperity were discussed.
To start addressing, some of these environmental challenges, and the possibility of setting up specialist councils of countries that would provide skilled resources addressing different aspects of preserving the environment.
And back home in Abuja, the Supreme Court has affirmed the election of 4 state governors of Kano, Sokoto, Bauchi and Plateau. The panel of justices led by Justice Sylvester Onguta gave the verdict in various appeals determined on Monday in Abuja.
And the well-conducted elections were all affirmed and reaffirmed by the Supreme Court. We are grateful to them.
We won at the polls, we won at the election tribunal, we won at the Court of Appeal, and now we have also won at the Supreme Court.
With this judgment, it has rekindled my confidence in the judiciary.
In the meantime, the Federal High Court Abuja has dismissed a suit seeking the disqualification of Kogi Governor Yahaya Bello from the 2019 Kogi governorship election. Allegedly double registration of voter, Justice Inyang Eko held that the plaintiff lacked local standing to file the suit.
Of the fact that the section speaks on criminal issues. You as an individual without a fiat of a prosecuting body cannot file action or civil action to claim that one be punished under the law.
The federal government has formally presented the National Policy on Methanol Fuel Production Technology Policy, expected to launch Nigeria as a methanol manufacturing country that will propel industrialization. It was at the Southeast presentation by the Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Obunaya Onu, in Umuahia, the Abia State capital.
For too long, our nation allowed our economy to rely almost entirely on commodities. Initially, we relied on agricultural products, then later, petroleum products, that is, crude oil and natural gas.
The House of Representatives ad hoc committee investigating MDAs on remittance to the Federation account on spent budgeted funds has commended the management of the Nigerian Television Authority for efficient record keeping on capital expenditure. This followed the submission of the authority's records of capital expenditure from 2009 to 2019.
The actual amount released was 61,
right,
which was spent,
right,
leaving a balance of 581.05
naira.
Yes, sir.
Is that 500 and something naira with you or with the Accountant General?
Accountant General.
Thank you.
To get sincere and committed to the cause of moving Nigeria forward in line with Mr. President's vision.
The federal government is collaborating with Spain in the fight against trafficking of women and girls in Nigeria. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, while receiving the former Vice President of Spain, Maria Teresa Penandes de la Vega, says the 2015 National Migration Policy and Operations of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, the goal is to ensure the prevention, protection, prosecution of culprits and strengthen established partnerships to end this practice.
In advocacy campaigns against trafficking in our mainstream media, sure you are aware of that. Also, NAPTIP provides shelters to these victims when they are returned home, areas of social support and empowerment to these returned victims. So these are also areas that we might partner with, so maybe you have started something in NAPTIP.
And that's the news highlights for now. Kinsley and Jumai will be with you in just a moment. Stay with us.
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. Igniting smiles across Africa and beyond. As Goge Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in the quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnership with the largest TV network in Africa, the NTA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Lagos State Government, Canon, Delta Airlines, Royal Caribbean, Tour Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogeafrica.tv. Goge Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage, travel and tourism.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Linko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad or even end up in prison.
This year, the weather conditions Harmattan in Nigeria is harsh, with temperature dropping very low in some parts of the country. Many underprivileged children are exposed to these harsh weather conditions, putting them at risk to all sorts of respiratory infections with devastating consequences. We request well-meaning Nigerians to kindly donate warm clothing, blankets, beverages, soap, moisturizers, and other essential items for the benefit of these children. Get involved to support displaced and underprivileged children exposed to these harsh weather conditions. Powered by Aisha Buhari Foundation.
My name is Balaunti. I'm the Managing Director of Petroleum Product Marketing Company, a subsidiary of NNPC. There are significant price discrepancy between Nigeria and its neighbors across Africa. There's a discrepancy of between 150 to 250 naira. That creates an incentive for arbitrage, whereby smuggling triumphed by taking petroleum products across the neighbors so that they can be sold at higher price. While the smugglers are making the money, Nigeria is paying for it. And that payment is distorting everything that we do in terms of planning, in terms of our ability to fund, and thereby taking money that is meant for development. The introduction of this Operation White will have a reduction of close to 6 million liters on daily basis, which if you take an average of 150, translate to a saving of over 1 billion naira every day. That is the benefit of Operation White, and we have started seeing the great benefit.
Thanks for joining us. Up next is Business News.
The IMF, in its latest quarterly update to the World Economic Outlook report, says global growth is sluggish but tentatively stabilizing after 2 years of slowing, and projects growth to recover modestly from 2.9% in 2019 to 3.3% in 2020 and 3.4% in 2021. The signing of Phase 1 trade deal between the US and China and the fading uncertainty surrounding Brexit are given as positive steps. In another development, the World Bank, under Nigeria's Open Government Partnership, insists that governments at all levels will ensure that citizens participate actively in the budget process for better understanding of how it affects their lives. This is part of issues being discussed at a workshop on citizens' budgets and participation organized by State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability Program for Results holding in Nigeria.
We are seeing a growing number of states now, at least as a first step, sharing a simplified version of the budget. From our last count in 2019, 23 states were able to do that, and we're hoping that by the end of this workshop, all the 36 states of the Federation will be able to publish their own citizens' version.
Every year, after we have harmonized our draft budget, we always call for town hall meeting where they make input, and government willingly included the input of the citizens into the budget.
And next are the details of Monday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thank you very much, Kunle Adeyeye, for the business package. Next for us is a review of some of the papers we have this morning.
Teobi, our newspaper reviewer, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Juma.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good morning, Kinsley.
Right, Bayo. Good to see you.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay.
So Kinsley, we'll start with the blueprint.
Yes, let's take a look at the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. The lead stories, of course, in the two papers that we have so far focus on the judgments of the Supreme Court yesterday with regard to the governorship elections concerning some of the states. So the Blueprint captures it this way. Despite PDP's insinuations, Supreme Court affirms Bala and Tambuwa's victories with a number of riders there. Ganduje and Lalong scaled through and day of bad blood over. That's according to the Kano governor. Jos Agog for Lalong, a Bauchi governor promises inclusive governance. We are shocked by Sokoto verdict. That's according to APC. And Buhari congratulates governors. Details can be found on page 6 as well as on page 22. And then above that is a headline, Imo PDP vows to fight Buhari's agenda. That's page 9. And also further above that, but below the nameplate, Kaduna Highway, police nab 60 suspected kidnappers and robbers. Recover arms smuggling bike, 31 weapons, 469 ammunition, and 355 cartridges. An earpiece beside the nameplate, IMF projects 2.5% growth for Nigeria's economy in 2020. Implement pension enhancement for retirees. PENCOM directs PFAs, that's pension fund administrators. And then right at the foot of the front page, immediately below the photograph, local governments and local government development areas dissolution. Federal government directs Makinde to return sacked chairman. That's on page 22. We close borders due to influx of arms and drugs. President Buhari is speaking there on page 5. 3 killed in farmers' herders clash in Kogi, page 5. PDP nationwide protest, senseless and disrespectful. That's attributed to the APC with details on page 21. Double registration, court strikes out Akpoti suit against Bello. Details on page 13.
And the Daily Sun newspaper this morning, just beside the masthead, Buhari meets UK Prime Minister, seeks extradition of fugitives to answer corruption charges. With Rider, says things are getting better in war against insurgency. And just like Kinsley said, the bold headlines in all the papers, as Supreme Court decides Gerber polls tension in Adamawa Benue over Fintri Autumn's fate. With a Rider, Apex Court affirms Tambuwa Ganduje Muhammad's election. That story is on page 6. On the picture story there, Buhari with President Muhammadu Buhari right, with President Paul Kagame of Rwanda. Second right, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Middle, President El Sisi Abdel Fattah of Egypt. Second left, President Macky Sall of Senegal. Left, and others during a family photo ahead of the program of opening plenary at the UK Africa Summit yesterday. Akpabio surrenders on senatorial rerun. That story is on page 41 with rider Count Me Out. He says, "You are candidate, INEC insist." Imo Gabo seconders Obi lead PDP members mass protest in Abuja with a rider PDP threat to democracy, says APC. You find that story on page 39. And EFCC arraigns ex-AGF Adoke today with a rider files 1.7 billion money laundering charge to prosecute him on Malabo Halliburton case 2. That story is on page 6. Death toll in Lagos pipeline fire hits 5. With rider carry fingers NNPC officials, security agencies. And at the bottom plate of the Daily Sun newspaper, 3 killed, others injured as container falls on tricycle in Anambra State. You find that story on page 4. Bayo.
Thank you, Jume. Well, the anxieties that is reported there is prevailing in Adamawa and Benue because they are still waiting the judgment. But however, the earlier anxieties in 4 states turned to jubilation yesterday. Jubilation on the streets of Sokoto, Jos, and also Bauchi, as well as Kano. The People's Democratic Party in Sokoto thronged the streets to jubilate over the declaration of Governor Aminu Waziri Tambuwal as the governor. This was because the case filed against him had been thrown out as lacking in merit. This was the pronouncement by Justice Abba Aji, who led the majority judgment. In the case of Kano, Kano too, the same thing happened. The case was thrown out for lacking in merit. For the case of the Governor Lalong in Plateau State, it was also judged to be a lack of merit. Justice Adamu Galtine led the unanimous decision that said that General Jeremiah Husseini's appeal lacked merit. Justice Mohammed Dettijo led the panel of 7 justices to say that the appeal filed by former Governor Muhammad Abubakar also lacked merit, therefore confirming Bala Mohammed as having been duly elected. There were morning sessions and afternoon sessions, and it's been a strenuous time for the justices of this Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party, led by the party chairman, Prince Uche Secondus, also urged the Supreme Court to reverse itself, stressing that the figures upon which it predicated its verdict on the Imo State election do not add up. The All Progressive Congress also, in a statement by its publicity secretary, has also criticized the chairman of the People's Democratic Party that his statements have been very indecorous and contemptuous of the court. Meanwhile, anxiety still prevails. There is 2 to go, Benue and Adawa, yes, and all eyes are on the Supreme Court for that version. But that paper there was saying, alluding to the earlier pronouncement by the chairman of the People's Democratic Party, calling on the Chief Justice of Nigeria to rescue himself from the cases of the People's Democratic Party because allegedly they did not have confidence in him. But the outcome of the courts have proved otherwise. The fears that were expressed about Sokoto and Bauchi has actually not been confirmed.
And it was absolute silence yesterday on the social media. Actually, we had to rest. When Imo State Governor was removed and replaced with Uzodimma, there was an uproar all over. This justice not denied, justice. But yesterday there was absolute silence.
Well, you see, politicians are like that. When they win, the court is the last hope of the ordinary man. Yeah. When they lose, it's either the executive or security or INEC has subverted their interest. So it is not new, but it's better for us if we learn to accept the verdicts at the court. If you go by the outcome of the instances, you'll find that a higher percentage of the rulings of the decision at the polls have been upheld. There are a few instances that has been an opt-out, but it is their prerogative to go to court if they don't want. But it reminds me of a forum where I attended, and one of my colleagues, an editor, pointed out that a politician once told him why they go to court after losing the election is to make sure that their supporters are still with them, challenge the status quo so that their supporters will not migrate to their opponent. So they must continue to keep the flag flying, so to say. But be that as it may, it's part of our own democratic process.
Well, it's gradually, I mean, we are having the building blocks that would manifest almost inevitably in a shift in our electoral system. Because what you just said now with regard to ensuring that your supporters do not become migratory birds on the heels of the loss of an election. We've always talked about on this program, and indeed elsewhere, talked about the need for proportional representation. It is because the system we have now is winner take all. That is first past the post, that you have all of this. So there's no sense of belonging. I mean, I indicated, if you recall, Bayo, sometime in the past, that the first time I saw, the beauty of this was during Namibia's independence elections in 1989. They used proportional representation. That was a fight, to get power from the white minority apartheid regime that was controlling Southwest Africa, as it was then called. And there was SWAPO, which was the liberation movement, and then there was DTA. But they all got into the Constituent Assembly on account of the number of votes they got proportionally. And then you also saw that in South Africa. So it has a way of assuaging the fears of being shut out for the next 4 years, and then you are having all these gypsies who are moving from one party to the other. You don't know which party they belong to. So today you hear people shouting PDP, another day is APC, another day YPP, and so on and so forth. So we'll see how it goes going forward. The other story
for being in limbo for 4 years.
Absolutely. But the other story, of course, Juma read it. It's from the Daily Sun. Senator Godswill Akpabio says he's no longer interested in the rerun, of the election, part of the election for the senatorial. This annexes that you have nowhere to go, you will still run.
He's still a candidate.
Yes, you're still a candidate. And of course, this is according to INEC on the ground that the date for substitution had long elapsed, before he now indicated that he would not be part of it. So his name will be on the ballot, as it were, and the votes, whatever they are, will be attributed to him. If by some magic he triumphs,
he wins.
He will, of course. If by some magic,
when he has disowned,
if by some magic, the votes will be attributed to him.
Anyway, it is often said that the votes are not for the individual; it's for the party.
For the political party, yes.
So the party is going to lose if he doesn't.
He will do that. So, but of course, it looks like that's some chance by a mile.
Well, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice has advised the Governor of Oyo State, Governor Seyi Makinde, to reinstate the SAC local government administration. In a letter that he sent to the Attorney General of Oyo State, he predicated the decision on the decision of the Supreme Court that also relied on Section 7 of the Constitution, I think, that it is illegal for the way and unconstitutional the way the Oyo State government dispose of the local government administration. And it is not only a characteristic of Oyo State alone. Several state governments have a penchant of dissolving the local government councils. I think, Kingsley, you have had cause to allude to this on several occasions, that local government councils are elected, and a governor cannot, by whim or by caprice,
remove them.
Just remove them or dissolve them. And that has been upheld by the Supreme Court. So by that instructions, it's not only Oyo State, any state of the Federation where the local government council had been dissolved, attention must be drawn to the fact that such dissolution are ultra violates the law.
Okay, Bayo, there's some points to emphasize here on this story with regard to what the Attorney General of the Federation has done. Yes, there is a Supreme Court decision now saying that local governments must be run by democratically elected councillors and chairmen. That's in accordance with Section 7 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. Now, the challenge always had been that state governors, on account of the immense powers that they exercise, could dissolve councils, appoint caretaker chairmen or caretaker committees for as long as they wished. And unfortunately, there were no persons who had standing in those areas to challenge what the governors had done, because they were also insiders. And part of what we were discussing a while ago, a number of them would fear that, okay, if I took the governor to court, perhaps then, the gravy train will pass me by, or I won't be allowed to board the gravy train. But in this case, there's already a Supreme Court decision, and I think it's important that the law be enforced. So if the Attorney General is drawing the attention of the Oyo State Governor to what the Supreme Court has decided, this, in my opinion, is not a case of interference of the federal government with the affairs of a local government. And as you rightly said, Bayo, every other state government that falls out of line with this, we'll see what happens. But of course, we just hope that, there will be understanding as quickly as possible so that it doesn't degenerate to what happened between President Obasanjo and Bola Tinubu with regard to the creation of the local government, development areas, which were not listed in the schedules of the Constitution. Bayo, take editorial now, or you have another story?
Yes, I wanted to draw attention to what happened at the United Kingdom, the UK-Africa Summit.
Okay.
The president used the occasion to tell the Ghanaian president that the closure of the Nigeria's land border is temporary, and the objective behind it is not only just the illegal importation of rice, but smuggling of arms and hard drugs that is having its toll on Nigerians' youth. The president, however, said he is concerned about the impact on Nigeria's neighbor. However, there will be a review at the situation when the committee set up to look into the issue submits its report.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the editorial this morning is taken from the New Telegraph newspaper at page 15. Crisis, distractions hinder football development.
Well, again, the editorial is happening on what we all are familiar with. For instance, the Nigerian Football Federation, for several years, had been in court over who is the rightful president or who should occupy the position. And that has become a distraction. Similarly, several sports federations are having one tussle or the other. And the editorial is happening on the fact that Delta is one of the foremost states when it comes to sports development. But the recent development, again, within that context, if it is not checked, will bring sports development and the primary position of Delta down. You recall several years back, we used to have a sports development center as a FUSE.
Yes.
And that became the venue for which sports men and women were trained, and Nigeria had a prominent position, particularly track and field on the African continent. But where are we today? We used to recall that long distance runners for marathon from the plateau area were very prominent, but everybody is gone under because the House of Sports, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, is actually required to get its acts together. And internal wranglings are strongly responsible for some of this distraction of the potentials that we have among our athletes.
Okay, Bayo, thank you. I mean, that's issue with regard to the squabbles in the House of Football would actually lead one to ask this question. 2020 is the year for another Olympics. Where are we?
Yeah.
That's $1 million question.
Poser for Nigeria football.
Where are we? Because in a couple of months hence, that's those who will win medals, have been preparing long ago.
Immediately the Olympics ended, they started.
Right. But here, I mean, we're all concerned about election, politics.
And that is, in fact, a challenge to the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports, Sunday Dare. The time to lay our bed for Olympics is now, if it has not started 4 years ago.
My take is we should privatize sports in this country. That's my take, actually. That's my opinion. Well, thank you so much, Bayo, for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break right now. When we return, we'll begin our conversation.
Nigeria is our country, and it's the only country we have. Irrespective of religion, tribe, the heroes of our past did their best to take Nigeria to where it is today. It would be unfortunate, I repeat, unfortunate, absolutely, if we don't keep Nigeria intact. We must put our differences behind. We must let everybody know that human beings cannot live together without some differences. But at the end of the day, our country is Nigerian. It must always come first.
Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
In today's world, it's tough being a woman. But thanks to So Clean, Nigeria's #1 detergent with stain magnet technology, doing washing is a whole lot faster and smarter too. Only So Clean has stain magnet technology with an advanced enzyme formula that pulls out even the toughest trapped dirt, just like powerful magnets. No wonder Nigerians love So Clean. So Clean, for a faster, brighter, cleaner wash.
And to set the pace for our conversation, let's listen to this backgrounder by Lydia Sampson.
That was the scene of a pipeline vandalized by some miscreants. Critical stakeholders say the loss and danger associated with it is becoming one too many. It is not unconnected with the fact that, to some, it seemed profitable to scoop fuel and sell on the black market in their quest to make quick money. These people chose to neglect the fact that it is extremely dangerous, and most times the vandals themselves are burnt to death in the process. This act is not new in Abule Egba area in Lagos State, where petroleum product siphoning is taken to another level.
Ideally, when you open a pipe like this, anywhere in Nigeria, is water that flows. But strange as this may be, and unbelievable as it may sound, this is actually petroleum products.
The System 2B of NNPC pipeline is critical to the supply value chain as it supplies petroleum products to Lagos, Oyo, as well as Kwara State and environs. Ironically, the facility continues to be the target of pipeline vandalism, which has remained a thorn in the flesh of critical stakeholders in the oil and gas sector. Another pipeline vandalized, leading to the fire incident said to have been caused by activities of vandals at the Abule Egba axis, thereby sending many persons scampering for safety. The vandals were said to have ruptured the pipeline in a bid to scoop fuel when the explosion took place. The group managing director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Mele Kolo Kyari, visited the scene of the Abule Egba pipeline explosion in Lagos for an on-the-spot assessment.
Happening around this pipeline from Mosimi to Atlas, from Atlas Cove into Mosimi, all the way to Ilorin, acts of vandals of all natures along a right of way. What they do is that they make insertions into our lines, tap petroleum product, and at the end, ends with the disaster that we have seen like this. This is happening daily. We are working with the security agencies to make sure that we reduce this to the barest minimum. We are also working with, particularly with the Nigerian Navy, the Civil Defense Corps, the Nigerian Police, and all other agencies of security, including Department of State Service, to contain this to bare minimum. What this portends is danger for all of us. If these incidents had happened under a windy condition yesterday, we would have been talking about thousands of people dying in this place.
The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, also lamented the rate at which pipelines are sabotaged in Nigeria, stressing that it rose from 115% in July 2019, with a record number of 228 points vandalized. How can the NNPC put a reliable pipeline product protection mechanism in place to handle situations of this nature? For now, the need to fortify surveillance around communities with clear demarcation of NNPC pipeline right-of-way, experts say, cannot be compromised.
All right, thank you very much, Lydia Sampson, for that background report. Now, with us in the studios here in Abuja, and as well as our Lagos Network Center, our guests to discuss this issue in further detail. First, let's welcome the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Malam Mele Kyari. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks very much. Good morning.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios, I would like to welcome Rear Admiral Oladele Daji. He's a flag officer officer commanding Western Naval Command. Rear Admiral, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning. Okay. And also here with us in the studios, would like to welcome the Assistant Commandant General of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, popularly referred to as Civil Defense, Jonathan Eyogo. Pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
And from our Lagos Network Center, we have the Director General of the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency, Dr. Olufemi Osayintolu. Dr. Osayintolu, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Good morning.
All right. So let's begin the conversation straight away. In the background report, you heard the Group Managing Director being reported there by our correspondent, and now he's here with us in the studios. GMD NNPC, tell us, I mean, we're having this recurrent incidents of pipeline explosions in and around Lagos, and the areas where the explosions occur would appear to be fairly localized. But why is this so?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria. It's really not a recent phenomenon. You know, pipeline attacks on our pipelines first started as acts of vandal for sabotage, then it gradually transited into a business. And what they do is because the pipeline right of way are very clear, they are clearly marked and they are very visible. So people know that there is a product pipeline running through these communities and along that path. So what they have now turned it into is some form of mini extraction points all along from Atlas Corp all the way to Mosimi. This is what we call System 2B. But it happens to all our pipelines across the country. And indeed, that is why many of our pipelines are today shut down, because we can no longer operate them, because they will no longer allow us to operate it. And in communities like what we saw in Lagos just recently, 3 days ago, it's an indication that these activities take place in the midst of communities. Everybody around that facility, around that community is aware that this is happening, because these insertions cannot be done in isolation, cannot be done unnoticed, and you can also not tap this petroleum product unnoticed by everybody. So what it means is that there's compromise of everybody, the community, the security agencies, the community leaders, our own staff, whenever they know about it, and everybody involved. So it's a tragic situation. But we are doing much about it.
So are you saying there's a conspiracy of silence when it comes to alerting the relevant authorities when these acts are being done?
Absolutely. There is a huge conspiracy of silence by everybody. Those who have responsibility to protect this pipeline keep quiet and keep silent. Those who watch this happen. And indeed, I was shocked when we went to the site of the last incidents that very proximate to that point, there's a big church, there's a big mosque. It means that worshippers of those locations, or the leadership of these two worshiping houses, are aware that this is happening. And it's quite strategic that we can watch this, that nobody bothers to report, and looking at all the dangers that is associated with it, not just about losing petroleum product, not even about causing a challenge to national energy security, but above all, lives are lost. And indeed, what they are doing could have translated to loss of thousands of lives in that location. And everybody watches it as if it's a normal thing that is going on.
All right, GMD, thanks. Let's bring in the Civil Defense Assistant Commandant General. I mean, one of your mandates is protection of critical national infrastructure, of which pipelines are top priority. What is happening now?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. Actually, it is our mandate, one of our core mandates, to protect critical national assets and infrastructure, just like you have said, particularly the oil pipelines. This job, we have been doing it with passion. We have our men carrying out surveillance activities on the pipeline right of way. As a matter of fact, it was our officers who were on surveillance that first of all noticed some smell of the petroleum product around the vicinity. And some few minutes later, we put a call to NNPC to alert them. And after about 30 minutes, the petrol was now gushing out from the pipe where it was ruptured, and everybody was now scampering for safety because of fear of the aftermath that may occur if there is a fire outbreak. So by the time the NNPC maintenance team came to the spot, it was very difficult to get to the point where the rupture happened. And that was how it now burst into flame. And this happened in the night, at about 9 o'clock in the night. So we were able to observe it, and then informed the stakeholder, the major stakeholder, which is the NNPC. Thank you.
Okay, Kingsley, said earlier that it has been a recurring decimal in that area. To me, I should think that the security apparatus there should be on standby and alert. You understand? So what is happening? Why is that place not being put, on alert for people to know that it's a dangerous place to be in when things like that happen? And see the people that are perpetuating this act itself, if there's enough security there.
Okay, what actually happened is that we cannot line our men along the entire length of the pipeline. We have been discussing with NNPC on actually involving technology in protecting these pipelines. And of course, the people have seen it as a business. So at the dark of the night, they come to perpetrate this act of vandalism. So if we are able to systematically and gradually bring in technology where the surveillance, the static surveillance, the dynamic surveillance is constant, then we'll be able to know whenever there is a breach on the pipeline of on the right of way of the pipeline. So this is still ongoing, and very soon we are sure, with the cooperation of NNPC, we'll be able to get to that point whereby we'll be able to monitor this particular place, which is highly vulnerable to vandalism.
Okay. Assistant Commander General, we'll pause you in the meantime and then return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's bring in now Rear Admiral Adele Daji. Well, this is the area is land in the first instance, but Atlas Cove, of course, abuts the sea. So, what is the role of the Navy in ensuring the security of pipelines? Some of the pipelines undersea or underwater have sometimes been vandalized. What exactly is your role in this?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians and viewers out there. The Nigerian Navy's involvement in the protection of pipelines stems from two critical imperatives. That is the need to ensure energy security, as well as the need for the protection of the sea flanks for business and other legitimate activities to thrive. However, I'm not here solely as on the platform of the Nigerian Navy, but as the operational commander of a defense headquarter-led operation called Operation Awatse, which has a mandate to support the NNPC and other security agencies in the protection of pipelines. And following the incessant rupture of the pipelines, the Chief of Defense Staff directed Operation Awatse, of which I command, comprises of the 3 services in Lagos area, as well as the DSS and other agencies, to launch a clinical surgical operation, which was codenamed Operation Kurumbe. It was activated on 5th of December this year, last year, 2019, and it's ongoing. It's part of a broader strategy to make sure that a sustainable solution is found to this menace of pipeline vandalism and theft of petroleum products. And so far, it has been achieved remarkable success in the sense that over 300 illegal insertions that were inserted into the pipeline for siphoning were discovered and dismantled. Over also 310 dog wells, were discovered, and they are in the process of being sealed off. We've also made some arrests, and efforts are on to ensure that there is a diligent prosecution of those involved. And what is even more tragic is that most of the residents on the island are foreigners, foreign nationals from neighboring West African countries. And they take these products at will and cross the border. And that is why we have ensured that the sea flanks are constantly patrol the choke points to ensure that we deter the illegal export of petroleum products to these countries by sea. And so far, we have recovered and destroyed about 500,000 empty jerrycans, which, if they had succeeded in filling them, would have cost the nation a whopping 1.7 billion naira so far. Some illegal structures on the pipeline were also destroyed, about 1,000 of them, shanties, where they connect pipes and build those shanties on top. And it might interest you to know there is a place there in Akaraba that serves as their spiritual headquarters, where they have shrines, they swear to oath, and we saw graves of people who dared to challenge them. They were, buried alive there. That shows the desperation, with which these vandals go. But on our part, we will continue to be focused on the mandate. We will not be distracted by those who think otherwise, and ensure that our country and indeed that part of the pipeline is fully secured.
It's a very sad situation, loss of lives, loss of property worth millions of naira. You've talked about Operation Awase, which is Kata in Hausa, and then Kurumbe. What I want to know is, what is the level of synergy between you and other security operatives?
Thank you very much. That is why at the beginning of the launch of Operation Kurumbe, we had what we call a coordinating conference. And every agency that was supposed to play one role or the other were present, including the NNPC staff, the immigration, because remember I told you that there were foreigners on the island that have dug themselves in for over 20 years. Every agency is carried along, and like I said, for the prosecution, the Department of State Services were gathering all the pieces of evidence, and in due course, those arrested will be charged to court.
Well, Rear Admiral, for the benefit of our viewers, what is the meaning of Operation Awase and Kurumbe?
Well, Operation Awase in Hausa means scatter. It's a defense headquarters-led operation. That means we report directly to the defense headquarters. And it covers Lagos State and parts of Ogun State, where these pipelines passes through. And when the issue of cultism and kidnapping in the creeks, reared their ugly heads about 2-3 years ago, the mandate of Awase was expanded to complement Operation Mesa to get rid of the kidnappers, the Badu boys, the Korodu area. Kurumbe, it's a code name for live there in Yoruba.
Okay, well, just one other point before we go to our Lagos Network Center. You've used the word island. Persons who are familiar with Lagos will be wondering whether it is Victoria Island that you are referring to or some other Itaoko, where you have some prison there in the past. So which island are you referring to now?
The island we are referring to is the Atlas Cove Island and the adjoining areas, that is the Takwa Bay as well as Ogogoro Island. This about 12 square kilometers in size is quite big, and the pipelines traverse these areas, and the vandals take advantage of the swampy terrain to perpetrate these criminal activities.
Okay, Rear Admiral, we'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's go over now to Lagos, where we earlier introduced Dr. Olufemi Osayintolu, who is Director General of the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency. That's LASEMA. Doctor, I mean, the temptation would be to ask you to give us a lowdown of the casualties, how you responded, but I want to skip that question. But you may choose to speak to that. I just wanted to ask, each time you have these pipeline explosions, LASEMA is one of the first and most prominent responders. I mean, you keep ensuring that those, of course, who are injured are evacuated and that the danger doesn't spread. Time and time again, these incidents happen. Do you have any interagency forum where you discuss to say, look, these environments that are so vulnerable, these are the vulnerability factors, and how do we mitigate those factors to ensure that our men, LASEMA men, don't keep wailing their sirens to go pick up dead bodies or to go rescue those who are gravely injured?
We do, under the watch of Mr. Governor, Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu, we do have a sort of interagency conference or the meetings. And we do carry out a lot of sensitization and advocacy around this area. We've built a sort of early warning response team in each of our 57 local governments. We have strengthened our local emergency management committee, and you can see that we keep on improving on the way we respond to emergency, especially the pipeline vandalization. And you can see that the way people are responding to pipeline vandalization or pipeline fire disaster has different. If you look at the way they responded to it in 2006 compared to what happened at Abule Egba in 2020, you can see the marked difference in it. These are the reasons that the mortality, morbidity associated with all these things has greatly reduced, especially under the watch of Mr. Governor.
Well, still with you, Dr. Sayintolu, thank you very much. I mean, the governor, that's why it's executive governor in the first instance. When I was talking about interagency cooperation and how to mitigate such disasters, part of what occurred to me has to do with land use. Now, there are reports, and there is evidence, by the way, of encroachment on the right-of-way of this pipeline. Some of those areas are fully built up, even on the pipelines where they siphon this fuel. So, do you have the land use committee in Lagos as part of your interagency interaction to be sure that those structures, which obviously are illegal, get cleared off?
We do, and it's been championed by the commissioner of the physical planning in collaboration or in conjunction with the building controlling agency. We've already in the community, we've carried out a sort of sensitization and advocacy. We've tried to put the map of all these pipelines in conjunction with the Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources in Lagos State. And however, we've informed the people that are encroaching the right way of the pipeline to leave the place, and we are enforcing it. We are enforcing it. We are working with the federal government agencies too.
talked about sensitization campaign, educating the populace on the dangers of vandalizing these pipelines. If it happens, like what happened on Saturday, what is your reaction? What happens to the victims that have been evacuated or those still, injured and in the hospital? What happens to them as an emergency response team?
Firstly, we have informed the people of Lagos State that whenever there's any form of emergency, they should call us on our emergency number. The emergency number of Lagos State is 767-112. And when it occurred, we will move swiftly, promptly, effectively, and efficiently with all other key stakeholders where their roles and responsibilities are well defined. The victims of these disasters, one, those ones that we treated instantly, for example, at Abule Egba, the last incident, we treated 20 people and we discharged them. Those people that sustained serious injury, we always evacuated them to our health facilities where they will receive free medical treatment. Also, the victims now, which the people that were displaced in Lagos State, we have a relief camp where we can accommodate them, where we can't improve their psychological being, because really they will be depressed. There is a lot of issues associated with it. And right now, we are going to work with all other key stakeholders to ensure that we cushion the effect of this disaster on our people. The governor has directed that we look at it holistically. We are working with the NMPC, we are working with the local government, we are working with all the key stakeholders to ensure the well-being of these victims. At Abule Egba, right now, we have 11 houses being affected. We have 17 shops affected. We have 33 articulated vehicles affected. We have 3 cars affected. And we have moto mawa keke, 3 are affected. And 150 people are displaced, including children. We sympathize with the families that lost their beloved ones. We have 5 fatalities, 3 males, 1 female, and 1 young girl of about 5-year-old. So we are looking at these with all the key stakeholders to ameliorate the effects of this disaster on the people in that area.
Okay, thank you very much, DG Lasema. We'll return to you, as we say, in the course of the conversation. Let's come back now to our Abuja studios and back to the Group Managing Director of NNPC. Listening to Rear Admiral Daji and the numbers that he read out, some over 300 puncture points along your pipelines, and the immediate impression that creates is a presumption that perhaps NNPC itself doesn't care so much about its own pipelines. At the time you're having 300 rupture points, what is happening? I mean, what is the PPMC doing with regard to its own pipelines?
Thank you very much. I think that's the point Rear Admiral Daji made, is that we're collaborating extensively with the security agencies to make sure that we bring this very unhealthy situation into control. As you may be aware, this pipeline traverses through swamps, creeks, and areas that you can just not access. As a matter of fact, even to security agencies, the vandals have become so sophisticated that they fight back to prevent not just NNPC from accessing the pipeline, but even officers of the security agencies, until this most recent high-profile intervention by the Chief of Defense Staff and his team, and we are very grateful for that. We are aware that there are insertions into our pipeline. We remove them on a daily basis. As you remove, they fix another one, and on a continuous basis. And everything that is happening in that locality along that right-of-way on the pipeline, they are not hidden. They are not unknown to us. We are not refusing to take any action, but we do replace them. We do plug back the insertions, and so on routine basis. So it's really, if you have 300 today, tomorrow you have 400, the next day you have 80 as you take them out. And it's a continuous thing. That is why we believe that what the Operation Awase is doing today now is sustainable. the actions that they have taken so far has degraded the acts of the vandals in a very profound way. And ultimately, we believe that this pipeline will be safe. And we're also taking some measures ourselves. We're deploying technology to the maximum possibility that we can do. We're thinking of boring these pipes deeper. Yes, it is more expensive, but ultimately it is probably much more safer and much more economical to do that. And also to sustain the ongoing high-level collaboration between us and the security agencies, and even on the ground, on the basis that we have to support these agencies to make sure that they deliver on this. We're not unaware.
Like you were talking about technology, just like the Assistant Commandant General, Nigeria Civil Defense, Security and Civil Defense said, and technology, since you said that it's inaccessible at times, the security operatives will not be allowed by the pipeline vandals to get to the place where you need to do some repairs. Technology around the world now is not, it's like drones, using drones to, survey these areas and access damage to your product. Is technology in that aspect going that far to use drones maybe?
Yeah, technology complements the men on the ground, and that's what it essentially does. It enables you to do two things. First of all, technology enables you to bury the pipes deeper, which is called HDD. There are many names in the industry. There are many things you can do around what you can do with the facility itself. Then secondly, when there are infractions on the pipeline, there must be a way of knowing that this has happened. There are technological applications that will allow you to fix things on the pipeline itself, or apply drones and other UAVs to tell you that what is going on. And then the third thing that you have to do is a rapid response. You may know everything about it, but if you have no capability to reach the position, it will be useless. That is why what we are doing today, the interagency collaboration with the security agencies will work. We'll fix the technology, we'll put intervention that are necessary, and then the rapid response that will ultimately have to come into play. And indeed, because of the intervention that we are seeing today, we have almost have access to the pipelines today. The Nigerian Army is called SAPAS. There's an engineering unit part of the Nigerian Army which does work for us now, clearing the right of way, areas that our ordinary contractors can't access. Now the armed forces are helping us to access it. So ultimately, this pipeline will be secure in many fronts. I'm very confident that this will work ultimately.
Okay, but thanks a lot, GMD. Of course, a couple of months ago, that was sometime in November, NATI had its own policy dialogue with regard to stemming oil theft in Nigeria, sabotage and oil theft, and some of these issues with respect to application of technology, which also came up at that policy dialogue. There's an aspect of it, of course, I would like you to speak to subsequently. But let's come back to Rear Admiral Adaji. Now, still dealing with the surface issues. As part of the incidents of pipeline vandalism in and around the Lagos area, for many years, Arepo, which is actually in Ogun State, was notorious for acts of pipeline vandalism. And at some point, the Air Force had to be called in. And I think they used Alpha jets in strafing those locations. And for a while now, where there have been no reports from Arepo. So what lessons can be translated from the success, assuming that success is enduring, dealing with the vandals in the Arepo area to other locations where we are continuing to have these unending incidents of a pipeline rupture?
Thank you very much for that. One of the major achievements of Operation Awatsi since inception in 2014 was the dislodgement of entrenched vandals around Arepo, and the interagency collaboration and cooperation, the synergy for which the operations was carried out was clinical, and there was no loss of innocent lives or destruction of property. That's a lesson that we took from there and which we are also applying in the ongoing Operation Kurumbe. So far, nobody has been harassed, nobody has died or lost limbs. And secondly, that has been enduring because immediately those vandals were dislodged, the NNPC ensured that the pipe was buried deeper and the right of way was cleared by 40 meters and 40 meters on either side to have a very clear view up to a distance of about 7 kilometers. I think these are the two major lessons that I can say we took away from the success of the operation at Arepo.
Most of these vandals have money. You begin to wonder how they could, when they transport the oil, they make a lot of money like you mentioned. Are they faceless? Do we really know the people that are doing this? Are they faceless?
I will tell you that they are not faceless. They live amongst us, within us, and the security agencies have, since Operation Kurumbe started, have been on the trail of some of them. Some, like I said, have been arrested and they are undergoing interrogation. They are not faceless.
They've not been, no prosecution so far?
We just don't want to prosecute for the sake of prosecuting. We need to gather all the pieces. Like you say, they are becoming more sophisticated. We need to gather all the pieces of evidence and make sure that we have a watertight case before they are charged to court.
Okay, Assistant Commandant General Jonathan Yogo, let's come back to you. Part of your mandate being the security of pipelines, one would imagine that surveillance is also part of it. But apart from your men physically being present along the route of the pipelines and carrying their long rifles, what do you have with regard to intelligence gathering? So that it is not when the pipeline has been ruptured that your men will now be calling an NPC to say, look, we have noticed this. People will plan, and then there will be movements and so on and so forth, presumably for those who are in that sector.
Thank you very much. Protection of the critical national assets and infrastructure does not begin and end with carrying of weapons. Actually, we engage in surveillance and also engage the communities in terms of intelligence gathering. And with the synergy we are talking about, we have other security agencies, intelligence agencies that also give us information. And with this information, we go around arresting those we suspect to vandalize the pipelines. Not only the pipelines, all critical national assets and infrastructure, including the power lines, water lines. And we are empowered. We have the power to arrest with or without warrant, and then detain, investigate, and prosecute. This aspect of enforcement of Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps has not been exploited by other security agencies. Because in cases where we have done this, we have gotten conviction, even up to life imprisonment. Because if this is done, it will now serve as a deterrent to others. Because with the prosecution that we engage, it will now keep the criminals and the vandals away for a very long time. And since this is not, for now, being done in synergy with other security agencies, then the vandals will continue to be empowered to go to the pipelines. So we need the cooperation of other security agencies to give us these criminals so that we can prosecute. For example, in 2018, we secured a conviction in Bayelsa State. 2 people to life imprisonment. So we need to work more together in this area.
Do we need a stricter penalty like we see in places like Saudi Arabia when people like this are caught and prosecuted? Do you need a stricter term, of analyzing the way they do things and like prison and other things I wouldn't want to mention here?
Actually, we use the Miscellaneous Offences Act, which has recommended very strict conviction terms. For example, if you are a vendor of oil pipeline, there's no option of fine. It's life imprisonment. So I don't know what could be stricter than that. And for vendors of equipment and other things, it's a minimum of 14 years imprisonment. And this is what we do by taking them to the Federal High Court. We don't take them to lower courts like the High Court or Magistrate Courts. So we are using this opportunity to tell the other agencies like the military that whenever they, in collaboration, whenever these vandals are arrested, they should be handed over to us so that we can do due diligence and prosecute them appropriately. Because deterrence is the key. Because if people know, if these criminals know that when they are caught, they will be kept away for a very long time, in fact for a lifetime, the incidence of vandalism will reduce drastically.
I was just wondering, Assistant Commandant General of the Civil Defense Corps, at the Native Policy Dialogue to which I referred to earlier, this same issue of interagency cooperation and collaboration also came up. And Rear Admiral Adaji, you're also here. Well, yes, the Civil Defense Corps has celebrated some of the cases that it has prosecuted, but why would it be so that, assuming other agencies arrest these pipeline vendors, they are not handed over almost immediately to civil defense, and then the proofs of evidence prepared and the arraignment at the Federal High Court expedited so that the punishment is swift and deterrence meted out accordingly?
Well, I believe that there are institutionalized processes and procedures for such things. For instance, the Nigerian Navy, in collaboration with other stakeholders, agreed and came up with a document called the Harmonized Standard Operating Procedures for Arrest, Detention and Prosecution of Persons. And the powers and the duties of every agency is quite explicitly spelled out in that document. We've operated it now for about 3.5 years. Yes, it's still being fine-tuned as we go along the way, but I believe that if other agencies have not been doing that, I know that the Nigerian Navy has been very consistent in handing over appropriately, and they are documented in the media. Also, Operation Awatse, which is a joint operations led by DHQ, have been handing over suspects to prosecuting agencies.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm now coming back to the GMD, NNPC, Mele Kyari. We've talked about prosecution, arrest, and let's talk about now clearance of pollutants. When these things happen, it affects the livelihood of the community itself, and the aquatic life dies, the water is polluted, the area is burnt down. What is the role, the civic responsibility of the NNPC to such communities? What do you do to alleviate their sufferings in instances like this?
Thank you very much. When incidents of spill happens, it can happen in two ways. One can be operational situation where the pipeline, because of age and excessive pressure, it can rupture without the acts of vandals. This happens both on our product lines and on our crude oil lines across our assets. Then the second component of it is when it is an act of vandals. That becomes far more difficult to manage. So whenever any of these incidents happen, the first thing we do is to restore the line so that you can limit the spill, what we call containment, so that you stop further flow of the oil, whether it is crude or petroleum product, into the environment. Then the next step we do is we move in to decontaminate the place. It's a routine practice. We do our utmost to make sure that we do clearance as soon as the incidence is, the physical incidence is overcome. So it is really routine. It's our duty, it's our responsibility that without prompting, this is the first thing we do. But sometimes when they are of massive scale, and when it is arose from acts of vandals, and that becomes much more difficult to manage, we still go ahead to clean the environment.
GMD, I earlier talked about the Native Policy Dialogue. You had your managing directors who were present, or chief operating officers of some of your divisions who were present on that occasion. One issue that came up, and it's a common day issue now, has to do with the market for these products. I mean, Rear Admiral was here talking about so many thousands of jerry cans that were confiscated and eventually disposed of. Of course, some of those ones would have been going outside, but within the Nigerian environment, there is clear evidence that these markets are fairly open. I know that you might argue that, okay, that would be the responsibility of DPR, and you are not DPR, who is the czar of the industry. But again, coming back to interagency cooperation, what is it that is being done to disrupt the markets for illegal refined petroleum products?
Yes, it's beyond illegally refined petroleum products. There is stealing of both crude oil, finished petroleum product, and then people who steal the crude oil and process them in very artisan manner, and of course they create other problems. It's very correct that without the market, you cannot, these businesses cannot thrive. As you may be aware, very recently the Nigerian Army arrested about 4 vessels of massive scale in the Niger Delta, particularly in our high seas. And what that means is that, the scale of the stealing is enormous. And therefore, only the intervention of the Nigerian Army and other agencies of the military can curb that. And of course, when it comes to the product stealing, there are 2 sets of markets. One is that when they do it in the scale that Rear Admiral Daji has said, when you have 500,000 jerry cans, that means it's clearly a cross-border activity. They take you to our neighboring countries to sell. And the only way you can take out that market is to stop it from going out. Because as long as they leave these countries, as you are aware, many of our neighboring countries are very weak countries. They do not have the capabilities to import petroleum products even when they need it. And therefore, for them, this is legitimate source of supply. And the only way we can stop this is to stop the activity in the first place.
Can it be stopped?
It can be minimized.
Okay.
Because there's huge arbitrage that occurs, and there's also a necessity which we have to face, because some of these countries around us are landlocked. They have no means of securing this petroleum product, and their governments, particularly on some occasions, they don't even have the capability to import. And therefore, to them, except we create a legal corridor for them, that the acts of cross-border smugglers will seem like legitimate business for them. And therefore, to completely eliminate it is you have to look at the dynamics of having a relationship with them to make sure that we are able to supply petroleum product on market basis. Okay. And that may cover it. Otherwise, you can only minimize it. You can only do the best that you can, because as you are aware, we have over 4,000 kilometers of land borders that cannot be completely manned. In some locations, we know that vehicles can actually move without roads. And therefore, controlling this with all the best of efforts of our security agencies can be a very Herculean task.
So is there a move to, sort of synergize with the neighboring countries to ensure that it is legitimized, this oil that is taken from our country, so that we don't lose so much money to them?
Yes, this may be the next legitimate step that we have to take.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, let's quickly go back to Dr. Olufemi Osaintolu, DG of LASEMA in our Lagos Network Center. Dr. Osaintolu, you were talking about sensitization of the communities in and around these pipelines, particularly the vulnerable locations, Abule Egba, Ijegun, and others. Now, GMD and NPC has indicated, for instance, that in the latest incident, you have a nearby church, you have a nearby mosque. What is the level of interaction and therefore sensitization amongst, say, traditional rulers in those localities, plus faith leaders?
Well, in our committee, the local emergency management committee, we have members of these religions as a member of the local emergency management committee. We have the Muslim leader, we have the pastor in that committee. Not only that, in our early warning unit across the 57 local governments, we have all these religion leaders in there. And one thing that we need to note that in Lagos State, we normally have what we call peace committee in all the local government that normally comes up around between Tuesday and Wednesday. And the unique thing about Lagos State is that we have emergency number which could be used as early warning number 2, which is 112 or 767. When you call us, when you notice anything in that your environment, it is not only for response alone, we can use it for a preventive procedure. You can call us on our 112 or 767 and it goes straight to our command control center where we have all the key stakeholders that are important to manage, to prevent any form of emergency in Lagos State. Where we have the civil defense, we have the police, we have the fire, we have the ambulance services, we have the LASEMA. All of us are together in that command control. But the beauty thing that we need to note at this Abule Egba incident, that the office of the civil defense is not far from that point where the incident occurred. So we need to note that and we need to review that holistically.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll get back to you on that and other issues, but right now we need to take a break. Tweets have been coming in. Nigerians want to contribute to this conversation. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
I'm Deputy Comptroller of Customs, Joseph Atta, the spokesman for the joint security exercise. Over a period of time, either through indifference or deliberate non-compliance to the ECOWAS protocol on transit of goods by our neighbors, the Nigerian Customs Service have been raising this issue. MOUs were signed severally. They were broken as soon as they were signed. We've seized over 32,050 kg bags of rice, and that is a huge impact. And then the fact that the coming in of this foreign rice have been completely shut down. We've gone around, we've received testimonies of farmers who, before now, found it difficult to sell one truck on a market day. These people say it now that those who could not sell one can now sell up to 20 trucks.
To dey disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say I no go dey do am again because change begins with me.
Cross the other side of the road. I will no longer endanger my life crossing the express. Instead, I will use the bridge because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now, won't come down. I be one carry me pass where they go.
Make I dey stop anyhow for road, they cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go dey stop for the right bus stop because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Welcome and thanks for joining us. Before we continue our conversation now, let's take the tweets that just came in. We have lots of them. And we begin with Law Alpha C. He says, pipeline explosion in Lagos State have become a reoccurring decimal, laying credence to the fact that a cartel involving even the security officials and some mischievous people are into it. There is no justification for pipeline vandalism across the Federation, which gives rise to explosion in view of attendant human losses and sabotage of government properties.
Judge Solomon, aside the immediate destruction of life and property as adverse effects of pipeline explosions, the runoff and sedimentation of the pollutant in freshwater systems severely would degrade water quality, affect fish and other aquatic habitats, thus lowering food web productivity.
It continues here.
Yeah, well, that's a bit long, so I just discard the...
Our first is Akimboyewa tweets, most times it's greed and ignorance that leads to pipeline explosion. Government must protect the pipelines and educate the people living around the pipelines. In fact, residents should be kept far away from the pipelines.
Obiago Ifeanyi, government should adopt citizen ownership of infrastructure. Citizens aged 55 years and above should be made to sign bonds to report vandals in their areas, or else they will be held liable and prosecuted if any vandalism occurs. How do you enforce that? If I go to work in the morning and I come back in the evening, why do you want me to sign a bond?
Yes.
It's a presumption of me being a criminal or an accessory.
You see, and Titus Monday Knock tweets, it's time government started looking at the right ways of some of these pipelines to minimize casualties or disaster when they do occur. Most of the engulfed buildings were close to the pipeline in question. Fraudulent government officials allow structures built on right-of-ways.
Mike Ayankwo, now this is a crime, too many, and it's now time for a state of emergency to be declared to save life and property. No matter the reason necessitating oil pipeline vandalism that causes explosion, it is despicable. Now, we strongly suggest that paramount rulers of towns or villages and their subjects engaged in pipeline vandalism be dethroned with immediate effect. A severe penalty should also await oil vandals. So what is calling for here?
That's what we're talking about, stricter measures.
Yes, and dethrone the traditional ruler of the
But Damasi Haruna Adamu tweets, it's a two-way thing. First, from the people who fail to embrace positive values, and secondly, the government for lack of proper security on the pipeline areas.
Now, Chris Simeon, there can't be smoke without fire. Persistent pipeline explosions in Lagos and its environs caused by oil thieves. Government should do the needful to curb the menace.
And Steve Bond 007 said, unconfirmed reports say the smell was obvious for hours before the blast, but no action was taken. There should be motion sensors on pipelines to detect interference of infrastructure and easy access for firemen.
Amogbala Hombabs, only recently we read of a story of how some Nigerians went to steal bolts and nuts on rail tracks that are being built. People are just heartless. We shout government doesn't provide infrastructure, yet we sabotage efforts being made to change the narrative. The federal government should do more in securing pipelines.
And Daily Jack Solomon tweets, pipeline vandals in Nigeria is encouraged by one or more cases of faulty and exposed pipeline, deficient pipeline monitoring system, sabotage and readily available markets for siphoned oil, making the need for more application of remote sensoring and GIS techniques to monitor pipelines is very imperative, and the need for reinforcement of the right-of-way laws on pipelines in Nigeria is absolutely necessary.
Abubakar Muhammad, what Mr. Kyari said is true, but government has to take more serious action with regard to pipeline problems in the country in order to secure life and property.
King Solo tweets, the best way to prevent pipeline vandalism is to recruit host community youths, that's HOSCOM, to protect and secure these assets.
Jimon Abayomi, NNPC or relevant agencies should consider the deployment of drones to monitor and gather information in order to mitigate the heinous crimes against the nation.
And Mospe tweets, at Ikotun side, Omole and Onile, to be precise, vandals have been arrested on several occasions and nothing came out of it. There was a case about a year ago, the Ejibo tank driver chairman who wanted to follow, is a long tweet there. What he said, you see the same people you are to report to participate in the crime, then you lose hope.
Mospet, that's the Twitter handle. You are surely right that with regard to the pipeline vandalism at Ijegun happening beside the palace. Now, how will you move a truck in the night in such an area and people will not know? The security people are not honest too. They all work together.
That's what talking about the conspiracy of silence. And Akiju Olagbaju tweets, we need to review the old pipeline acts to make them enforceable. It is only in this part of the world that people encroach on the pipeline's right-of-way and subject to all kinds of activities, building, farming, and of recent vandalization. It is like committing suicide.
Utulo Sunday. Now, this is negligence on the part of the host community and the security agencies. If you see something, say something. Let security begin with us.
Exactly.
Sympathize with the victims.
Yes.
All right, so those are the tweets that we can accommodate in the meantime. But I just want to come back again to the GMD NNPC. And partly, Nigerians will complain about the many tankers that are on our roads, and they also have their own crisis, congesting Apapa. Some of the tankers with refined petroleum products often going up in flames because they are overloaded or the tankers themselves are weak. And this is because virtually all tankers in different parts of the country have to come to a point around the coastal areas to get their fuel and then go back. Tell us something. I mean, you couldn't possibly have these ruptures of your pipelines at different points, hundreds of them, as you are fixing another one is going. What impact does this have on the integrity of your operations with regard to, one, the operation of the pipelines, and two, the resuscitation of your depots? Because you used to have depots around the country, and there was a point that you were trying to get them back on again, but the depots cannot be sucking in if there are no products in the pipelines.
Yes, thank you very much. Very good point. Our depot structure is designed in such a way that no truck will move for more than 200 kilometers before getting to the fueling station of discharge. That's why we have 27 fuel depots across the country linked by pipelines. And that's why the problem is we are unable to transport fuel by pipeline. Let me take them by segment. As you are aware, we are talking about the Atlas Cove all the way to Ilorin. Of course, it's a challenge. We are doing everything to fix it, take away the bundles, to have continuous operation of that pipeline. That will enable the sustenance of supply to the western part of the country, all the way to Ilorin. Then you have the pipeline that moves from Wari into Bini, all the way to Suleja and into Kaduna and further. Then you have another pipeline network that leaves from Port Harcourt into Aba, Enugu, all the way to Makodi, and then to Yola. Now, when the beginning is a challenge, for instance, when we tried to pump fuel from Aba into Enugu, we lost 70% of the product on that line.
Why?
Stiffs. It's very simple. Insertions, and there's not a single spill. That means, just like you have seen around the Jagun area all the way to the last point of incident that we have, it means that these insertions are done so professionally into homes, into fuel stations, that you can see these losses taking place without anybody reporting it, without seeing any spill. The same way, when we pump product from Port Harcourt to Aba, we don't lose as much as we do between Enugu and Aba, but we still lose at least 20 to 30% of the product that goes into that line. And then, of course, from Wari into Bini, we stopped operating that for over 10 years because it became impossible to operate that line. Completely impossible. I'm sure you remember all the incidents that happened along that line. That's why, at the best of effort, even when we fix the line and you start pumping product, you lose it. And therefore, they have practically demobilized the fuel depots across the country. And we are doing interventions to make sure that these pipelines are better secure, which is the work that we are doing today, to bury them deeper where we have to deploy technology when it is necessary and where it is necessary. And ultimately, we will now bring back the fuel depots into operation. Then they can see the pressure on the roads by having about 30 to 35,000 trucks operating in this country to go down. And the collateral effect is that when you have 30,000, 35,000 trucks on your road every day, that no matter what you do about road repairs, that they will come down, because some of these trucks actually carry up to 60,000 to 70,000 liters of petrol, far beyond any average that you can think of anywhere in the world. And therefore, the roads will go down with it. And of course, the cost of maintenance of the roads, collaterally also goes up. So we know that it is in overall national interest to make sure that these depots work. And that's why we need to get work done within us and security agencies, within the infrastructure agencies, to make sure that we bring back these depots. Once we do that, it minimizes the congestion in Lagos and in other parts of the coastal depot areas that we have today. Today, probably 100% of the products are supplied from the coastal depots. And that means these trucks have to move away from this quarter to the remotest part of this country. And it's a huge challenge. And it causes its own problem, accidents, safety issues, issues of, very recently now, even armed robbers now stopping trucks to take the product from them to fuel station. This is a new thing that is happening now.
So I don't understand. Armed robbers stop them,
yes,
take the fuel and
hijack
it and take it to fuel stations and sell it?
Absolutely. It has started last month. We have seen at least 40 cases now.
Well, that's a new dimension. I just wondering, Juma, and of course our guests and our viewers, the GMD was talking about the collateral damage. I will cite just one example, and I'm sure in your locality you can cite several other examples. In the past, before the dualization of the highway from Benin City to Efurun Junction or Warri, it would take me driving, 100 kilometers or less, 1 hour. Today, you can't do that journey in 2.5 hours. And most sections of the road have collapsed. I mean, you are to Lobo, it's collapsed. You are the Ethio Bridge is collapsed. On and on, up to Warri, up to Efurun Junction. And the reason is obvious. The vehicles that ply them are overloaded, and mostly they are tankers. And yet we say that the government is not providing infrastructure.
Apart from the oil, they load a lot of things on top of the tankers. So those are light items at the peak. I mean, if we're having 70,000 liters of fuel, or even 40 or 50,000 liters of fuel on a routine basis, there's no way those highways will not give way. I'm just wondering, Rear Admiral, look, what we seem to be dealing with here, this has become, we're talking about the pipeline explosion in Lagos, but it is obvious that this is part of a much wider national challenge. It's organized crime will probably be a mild way of describing it. It would appear that the nation is at war with vicious economic saboteurs. Are we on top of this?
To the extent that the security agencies have made arrests, like the senior officer from the civil defense has said, to the extent that some convictions have been made, yes. But can we do better? Yes. How can we do better? Through more synergy of efforts, not working in silos, believing and knowing and acting that we're all acting in the best interest of the nation and not my service or my agency. I think we'll be able to defeat, the bad guys at their game if we work together more closely.
Assistant Commandant General, are we on top of our game now?
We are doing our best to curtail these incidences. But I would like to comment here that in terms of the synergy we are talking about, we are not there yet. Okay. Because my organization, Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Law, is the lead agency in the protection of critical national assets and infrastructure, as even spelled out in the National Security Strategy, December 2019. So if we follow the protocol as enshrined in that document, then of course we'll be able to partner with the major stakeholders, particularly in the oil and gas industry, which is the NNPC. When we're talking about this overloading of trucks, there are standards. Okay. Think about 3,000 liters or maximum 40,000 liters. We are there to enforce that these standards are met. So NNPC have to partner with us, have to give us the necessary support together with other security agencies so that we can deal with these situations. Because on the pipeline right of way, we are doing our best to ensure that the issues that has to do with oil theft and vandalism are curtailed. And if all the other security agencies gives us that recognition and spelled out in that document, the National Security Strategy, then of course we will say, okay, the protocols would have been outlined so that every other person know his particular role in achieving this objective. Okay. So that is my take on that.
I don't know. That's the most that you can say on air with regard to interagency collaboration is there. But is there any point being too legalistic as to who's the lead agency and who isn't? Let it not begin to look like elections. You have the lead agency with regard to policing elections or providing election security, and yet, election after election, the level of violence and disruption of voting is unabating. So I think that is an issue that, of course, will require greater collaboration cooperation amongst the agencies. Let's go over to, once again, Dr. Olufemi Osaintolu, who is in our Lagos Network Center. But still, again, we keep bringing in these aspects of community engagement as well as deployment of your men. But clearly, you have many vulnerable points in and around those localities where the pipelines crisscross in Lagos. Do you have any particular challenge with community engagement? Because reference has been made to say, look, places of worship are bought where these pipelines exploded on Sunday. And you have traditional rulers who are in those locations where incidents had occurred in the past, apart from the case of that apparently reckless bulldozer driver many years ago. And then you have persons who are in this community who see this as a business, albeit a dangerous business that also sabotages the economy.
That kind of challenges under the watch of Mr. Governor, Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu. We've moved to the grassroots, and we are building the resilience from the grassroots. With as I said earlier, we have our local emergency, we have the early warning unit. We normally have meetings every week, but I keep on emphasizing that at that Abule Egba, the office of the civil defense is not far from that place. It is few meters from that place. However, it is pertinent to note that all hands are on deck in Lagos State under the watch of Mr. Governor. We will still continue carrying out sensitization and advocacy while our ministries that are involved in ensuring the protections of the right of way of this pipeline are working with the federal government agency like the Ministry of Physical Planning and the Ministry of the Mineral Resources in Lagos State. We are working in conjunction with our local governments to ensure that the rights of ways of this pipeline are well protected. And we need to emphasize that in Lagos State, we have emergency number that people could call us on. Our number is 112767. It is not only for response to any form of emergency, it's more of a preventive aspect. If you notice something strange, if you notice anything in your environment, you can call us on that number. And that number is being managed by all the key stakeholders that are important in planning, prevention, and in response to emergency. And in Lagos State today, you will discover that we have shifted from responsive acts to emergency. We are now moving more into the preventive aspects of managing emergency. We are not only carrying out sensitization or advocacy, we are carrying out building capacity under the watch of Mr. Governor. And we've had a lot of sophisticated equipment all over the state. We have a CCTV being used, we have drones, we have a world-class command control center. So what we are saying and what we are emphasizing in Lagos State, that in as much that the state is doing the needful, putting a lot of things in place, our people need to change their orientation. Our people need to key into the vision, mission, and agenda of Mr. Governor, which is the safety of life and properties.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Back here in the studio, one last question. MD, GMD, NNPC, Mele Kyari. It's like a chess game. You take a move, they take a move. What is the way forward?
Yes.
Briefly, as we round up.
Thank you very much. We are having a very syndicated approach to this challenge now. There are many fronts to it. First, the security agency part of it, which we are getting the optimum support and cooperation of the entire security network, spearheaded by the Chief of Defense Staff, and it's working. And then another level is that the National Assembly has stepped into this. And there's a committee now, an ad hoc committee going on to see how can they assist us to cover this menace of vandals and of that of crude oil theft. And then the other level is the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Chief Timothy Silva, has also taken another initiative to engage stakeholders, to bring everybody on the table to make sure that we're able to arrest this. And above all, Mr. President himself has personally taken this as a matter of national urgency, as an intervention that must take place so that we can, first of all, guarantee energy security, so that resources don't end up in the hands of the wrong people, and ultimately that we can contain some of the collateral damages that we see. And in that light, there are a number of interventions that are going. I will not speak about it on this platform, but I know that in the shortest frame of time, this thing will crystallize, and I believe that will come to a minimum situation.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your input. Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Mele Kolo Kyari. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. Assistant Commandant General, Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, Jonathan Yogo, an engineer by training. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. And Rear Admiral Oladele Bamidele Daji, Flag Officer Commanding Western Naval Command, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And in our Lagos Network Center, Dr. Olufemi Osayi Tolu, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you so much. On the program.
Thank you.
Super Eagles of Nigeria will know their opponents in the second round of the qualifiers for the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar today. The draw ceremony will take place in Carlton Hotel in Cairo, Egypt. The 14 winners from the first round will join Africa's top-ranked 26 sides in the draw. The Super Eagles were among the lot drawn by in the first round. The 40 teams will then be split into 10 groups of 4 for the second qualifying round. The 10 winners of those groups will then be drawn against each other in home and away fixtures, with the 5 victors advancing to Qatar 2022. The Super Eagles have been placed in pot 1 along the continent's heavyweights like Senegal, Tunisia, Algeria, Egypt, Ghana, Cameroon, and Morocco. Ghana Roar's Chargers have qualified for the last 3 editions of the FIFA World Cup in South Africa, Brazil, and Russia. And in tennis, 6-time Australian Open champion Roger Federer reached his second round at Melbourne Park with comfortable straight sets win over Steve Johnson. The Swiss 38 beat the American 6-3, 6-2, 6-2 on Rod Laver Arena. The third seed was playing his first competitive match since the ATP Finals in November, but needed just 1 hour 21 minutes to progress.
3 sets to 6-3, 6-2, 6-2. Easy breezy.
In other news, defending champion Novak Djokovic dropped his first set in the opening round of the Australian Open since 2006 before grinding down Jan-Lennard Struff to keep his quest for a record 8th title on track. The 16-time major winner finally got the job done 7-6, 6-2, 2-6, 6-1 on Rod Laver Arena for his 900th career win to make the second round at Melbourne Park for a 14th consecutive year.
Very proud of all the achievements, but at the same time, try to remind myself how grateful I have to be, still playing on a very high level. Here we are, 20 years, 25 years later, and, I can't take things for granted, I'm just trying to enjoy every moment.
All right, thank you very much there for the sports stories. Let's go over now to the foreign scene.
New virus cases in China spreads to Beijing and Shanghai as the number of people infected tripled over the weekend. Reports say there are now more than 200 cases, mostly in Wuhan, though the respiratory illness has also been detected in Beijing, Shanghai and Shenzhen. 3 people have died in China, while Japan, Thailand and South Korea have reported cases. And from the Gambian comes the report that the government has publicly addressed surging calls for former President Yahya Jammeh to return from exile in Equatorial Guinea. Minister of Justice Abubakar Tambadou said the former president will be arrested and charged with crimes committed during his over 2 decades in charge. While from the United Kingdom is the report that Britain is positioning itself to be the investment partner of choice for Africa, holding a summit with leaders of 21 African countries days before it leaves the European Union. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who secured the country's January 31st departure from the EU trading bloc, is determined to enter into new agreements with other countries.
And on entertainment news, Burna Boy makes Michelle Obama's walkout playlist for 2020. Let's join our arts and entertainment desk for more details.
The former First Lady of the United States of America, Michelle Obama, took to her Instagram page to share her workout playlist to help her get through her workout sessions in 2020. And Nigeria's Afrofusion artist, Burna Boy, makes the list with his song, My Money, My Baby. The list comes right after the Obamas released their summer playlist for 2019, and Nigeria's Burna Boy and Rema also made that list. Burna Boy's My Money, My Baby was also the soundtrack to the Hollywood blockbuster movie Queen and Slim that was released in 2019. This is a win for Burna Boy as the Afrofusion sound is gradually taking over the world.
Again, will you come today?
Still on music, talented American singer and songwriter Jon Bellion took to his Twitter page to recognize Mavin Records act, Johnny Joe. In his tweet, he called Johnny Joe the truth. In June of 2019, Johnny Joe met up with Jon Bellion at his concert in Nashville. Should we be expecting a song from this duo? Only time will tell.
That's Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks so much for watching. I am Juma Yusuf.
And I'm Kingsley Osado.